Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. We've got what we think is a interesting topic for you today. We're going to give you an update, a January 2026 update. So those are always fun. And then we're also going to spend some time talking about product selection. When should you use, maybe a Horner all-in-one controller? When should you use a Horner modular controller, which looks more like a traditional PLC? And does it really matter when you use one or the other? Is there a wrong answer? So that's part of what we're going to cover as well. And then I want to make some introductions here. So joining me today, we have our awesome marketing team. Emily Tedder is here today. How are we doing today, Emily?
I'm doing good, Chuck. How are you?
Great. And then we have our marketing guru, Marcy Tyree. How are we doing today, Marcy?
I'm great, Chuck. How are you?
Awesome. Fantastic. And then we have my colleague, Don Clutterbuck. How are we doing today, Don?
Doing great. Doing great.
Awesome. And Don and I are going to tag team the presentation today, and Don is up first. So Don, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
So let's go with the first slide here. And I always start off with this slide because we want to make sure you guys understand that Horner is a BABA company built in America by Americans. 90% of our automation equipment is built in Indianapolis. And we have gotten a lot of requests over the past 6 to 12 months of being a BABA company. And there's not many PLC manufacturers out there that can say that their PLC is made in America or Indianapolis. So we always start off with that, and it's gaining a little more traction. So again, this is going to be a short overview of OCS, and then we'll get to the new stuff, and then we'll get to the topic that we're discussing. So what is an OCS? OCS is a all-in-one controller that has a PLC in it, a fully integrated HMI communications, both serial, CAN, and Ethernet, and I/O on board, and then we also have remote I/O capability also. So the term OCS just means operator control station, and we've been talking about that since day one. The all-in-one controllers, and we'll just skip over this, but again, we have I/O, we have software now that can be data collection. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Remote I/O. So our whole family there is to help you get your process up and going. So we have 3 product lines. The micro line there on the left for new applications where limited I/O cost is a consideration. We have the XL Prime series, which is our workhorse. We sell a ton of these, and as you can see, we go from the XLE all the way up to a 15-inch Prime. And then we have the Canvas, our top-of-the-line controller that was introduced summer of last year. And that has multiple CPUs. It has enhanced graphics package. All of the drivers that we use in communications and so forth are included in the Canvas products. So 3 families depending on the application. And, we have all the screen sizes and so forth. With the XL Prime and Canvas, or in reality, these are the protocols that we support, and we support many more serial. But the more popular ones are BACnet, Ethernet. We'll talk about Ethernet in a few seconds. J1939 for engine control. CAN Open, we just had an application with CAN Open yesterday. And then MQTT Spark Plug for those applications that need to send data up to other data collection packages. We can send emails and so forth. But those are some of the drivers that we have. And if we don't have a driver, just ask us because we probably looked at it somewhat before. With our XL Prime and Canvas models, we have different model numbers based on what I/O fits the application. So we have models 2 through 6, as you see there, depending on the I/O, and then a model 0. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but a model 0 will allow you to take an XL Prime or Canvas with no I/O on the back and then go to remote I/O that's on the back plane of the panel in your enclosure. We'll talk a lot about this in a few seconds. Remote I/O options. In the lower right-hand corner there were smart sticks, which started in 1998. They're still around. They're still available. They're a great compact package for either 16-point or 32-point I/O, and a lot of people mount them vertically and use them to land the wires from the outside. So it's a terminal strip plus remote I/O. Smart Block is more for high-density analog and specialty modules. Smart Rail is I/O, slice I/O, that has Ethernet capabilities, Ethernet IP capabilities. And then our workhorse, or what we're moving forward with, is OCS I/O. Again, it's slice-based, CAN-based, but over this past couple of weeks, we will be working on an Ethernet base for these. But then we have a full selection of I/O and so forth. One module in particular, we actually have a 120-volt AC module. So for those old applications that use 120-volt AC control power, you could actually interface an OCS with that. So variety of different remote I/O options for different needs. That was our OCS overview. But some of the new things that are coming out relatively soon, I'm going to say in the first quarter of this year, is the first thing, and you asked for it, would be an Ethernet IP scanner. So with that, either a prime or a canvas can become an Ethernet IP scanner. For years, we have been an Ethernet IP client, meaning you needed a controller, a Rockwell controller, or anybody that was a scanner module and controller I/O. Now we can control I/O. So a lot of our distributors and a lot of our customers have pneumatic air banks or robots, collaborative robots that need an IP scanner to be the master or controller. We'll be able to support that relatively soon in both prime and canvas. Prime would be just like every other kind of driver we have. Prime will be a licensed driver. If you go to canvas, it will be in the canvas. Coming up very soon, we're calling this the Enhanced Micro Series. Now, with the micros, you have two flavors, correct? You have an R version, which is relay, relay outputs. We always have DC inputs, but relay outputs. And then we have the other version is an A. And one of the things that since 1998, there are some people that don't really like to wire to the door. We've given that option with XL and Canvas with Model Zeros. Consider this like the Model Zero of a micro, where there's going to be no I/O on the back, and then you are going to get a CNX module with the controller to allow you to use whatever I/O you need. Maybe you want DC outputs and relays in your system. By doing it this way, you would be able to do it on the backplane of the subpanel. So those are going to be introduced. And with that, right, Chuck, is a little bit more memory and a little more processing power.
Yeah. So the other big thing is people have said, we'd like to bridge the gap a little bit between the current micro and the canvas. And so this Micro E is part of the micro family, but it has larger memory to support larger programs and much faster scan time and faster screen changes. So higher performance as well.
Right. So we're real excited about that. We're selling a micro I/O relay module. Now, this can be used with any controllers, but it was more than talked about with a micro. Because if you have a relay micro and a relay goes out and you don't have a spare, you would have to replace the whole controller. Now, by using the micro I/O relay module, if any one of these relays go out, of course, you could use the spare again. But to replace this, you don't have to replace the whole controller. And they're relatively cost-effective. And we have two versions. We have one version that you could only have one slice. And then we have another version that you could daisy chain slices for 8 relays, 16, 32 relays, and so forth. But again, if any one of them fails, it's easy enough to replace those instead of the whole controller. Again, these have been out for a while and can be used with any controller. So if you want to put a relay way out on a CAN network remotely, you could use that in its place. So that's been out for a good 6 months or so. So look at it when you need those relays. Okay. Available now are our modular CPUs, and we'll talk a lot about modular CPUs. We have the CPU 200 there on the right. That is a micro CPU where you could use OCS-IO on the left up to 8 modules, I think, on this because there's no I/O. And then you have a LAN port, a serial port, and a CAN port, okay? Over on the left, this is very popular, an HE CPUs 250, where this has 8 digital in, 10 digital out, 8 flex inputs or analog, and 8 analog outputs. Again, with the CPU 250, you could add whatever additional I/O modules you need with OCS-IO. We have had the RCC modules for years. These are sort of the replacement modules for the RCCs. Okay, they're getting long in the tooth, parts are getting harder to find and so forth, but the CPU 250 can handle most of the applications that have been required to use an RCC. So they're available now. They're a great little product, and it just starts the conversation of modular CPUs. Now, the next one that was introduced at the same time was the CPU 300. You see it there with the little OCS logo. Now, that is a Canvas controller. It's in the Canvas family. You add I/O, just like OCS-IO, slice I/O on the side. You see you have an SD card slot. You have a USB-C port there in the upper left-hand corner. You have a USB-A port. You have a CAN port. You have 2 serial ports. You have 2 Ethernet ports, of course. And then this little green connector right there. That is an FPD link, flat panel display link. And that will allow you to connect up to an HMI Connect screen of whatever 4, 7, 10 inch, and we're working on 12s and 15s. But it will allow you to connect up to those screens and remotely mount those screens from a different place than a controller. So now we're starting to look like a traditional PLC, right? The controller on a DIN rail somewhere in the panel and the HMI on the screen or on the door of the panel. The one thing you have to remember, the HMI Connect screen does not have any software in it. Everything is driven by the CPU. So think of it as an all-in-one controller where we just took the display out and mounted somewhere else. So this allows you, and we'll talk about the certain different applications, but if that screen fails, you don't need to send an engineer out or anything. You could send it out and have someone just unplug it and plug the new one back in, and it will restart or fire right back up and work just as it did before. So we have 2 different types of HMI Connect screens. We have the standard screens, 4, 7, 10, 15. They're just like our OCS controllers all in one with a NEMA 4X front end, but they need to be panel mounted. Then we also have the HMI Connect Advanced screens. And if you held them, they are rock solid screens. They're high bright screens. They don't need to be in an enclosure. You can Visa mount them. You can panel mount them. Wherever you want, you can mount them outside and they will last. They were developed in part with our relationship with some emergency vehicle manufacturers. So this technology has been proven out and they're rugged. And again, they're great for outdoor applications, and we'll talk about that. So therefore, just get with your local distributor or rep, and they can help you select the correct panel. Okay, so how do we connect the HMI Connect screens? They use this cable that people have asked what type of connector that is. Can I make my own cables and so forth? No, you can't. They are specific to this application. But if you're a car nerd and you've looked at behind the screens of your new cars, you're going to see these connectors. This technology is not new. It's been in the auto industry for a while. We just happen to look at it and put it into an industrial type application. So therefore, this one cable to HMI Connect screens supplies the power, video, touch feedback. So therefore, you don't need a separate 24-volt couple wires. You don't need a separate Ethernet connection. It's just one cable. They're available in 3 lengths, 1 meter, 3 meter, and 8 meter. So therefore, in theory, you could have one display 25 feet away from the controller. But we also have a splitter, which will allow you to connect 3 displays of the same size across your machine. Now, they're going to display all the same thing, but in larger machines, you will be able to extend the distance, but also have 3 front, back, and side showing the same thing. But they have to be the same size. We are working on a controller that will have 2 FPD links on it that you could have different size screens on a machine. Now, I just want to go back just real. The CPU 250, one of the first questions we got asked is, where's the screen? So we are coming out with a CPU 260 that will have the FPD link on it. So therefore, you could go to HMI Connect screens. That will be coming out later this year. So therefore, the big question we have gotten when we've released the modular controllers is, when do I use an all-in-one or a modular? And Chuck said it earlier, there's no wrong answer. But there could be a better solution, just put it that way. So the handout is just a flyer that talks about where do you use a modular controller, where do you use an all-in-one controller? And Chuck will talk about those instances in a few seconds. So there, you can download this at your leisure and review it and so forth. So there you go, Chuck.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about, as Don just mentioned, is I'm going to go through some different scenarios, and we're going to talk about, in what are some scenarios where we might decide that an all-in-one controller is a better fit, and what are some scenarios where we're going to find that a modular controller that looks more like a traditional PLC might be a better fit. So we're going to go through these different scenarios. So we're going to start with a few scenarios where we might think that an all-in-one controller might fit better. So the big one is whenever space is at a premium. Any machine where space is at a premium, the absolute best solution is going to be a Horner all-in-one controller. Why is that? Well, first of all, it doesn't take up a lot of space. And compared with really any solution anywhere in industry, we're not just talking about the Horner product line now, you will not find a product with more functionality per square inch than you'll find with a Horner all-in-one controller. So we're talking about tabletop machines. We're talking about any kind of machine where square footage is at a premium. We could even be talking about oil rigs. Believe it or not, as large as oil rigs are, they are managing every square foot. And so we have customers who are using our all-in-one controllers to drive mud pumps on oil rigs because it's the most functionality in the smallest possible package. So even on something as large as an oil rig, sometimes space is critical. So any application where space is critical, an all-in-one is going to be the best solution. Now, are there going to be some small machines that people would rather use separates? I suppose, but in terms of the amount of functionality and the size available, you can't beat an all-in-one in that scenario. So let's talk about other situations where you've got a control and there's a fair amount of indicators and push buttons and meters and those sorts of things on the panel door. A real advantage of all-in-ones is you can wire all those devices and none of that wiring ever leaves the panel door. And if you want the rest of your I/O not to be on the panel door through a loom, then you can have the rest of the I/O remotely located, maybe in the same panel, but on the back plate using OCS I/O, for instance. So you can really take advantage of the I/O built into the back of an all-in-one controller to wire the devices on the door while still having the advantage of the rest of the I/O being on the back plate. So that's another scenario where you should really consider an all-in-one controller. Now let's talk about where the I/O combination that's included with an all-in-one controller is just the perfect fit for an application. So an example, there are plenty of applications we've heard from customers where they say, the I/O mix you've got on this micro or on this specific, maybe the Model 2 is just perfect for pump control. It's got everything I need for pump control. Not too much I/O, not too little I/O. It's just perfect. Okay, so at least from the perspective of cost and what's included and compactness, if the I/O mix or the I/O fit is just perfect, then an all-in-one controller is going to be hard to beat. Yeah, you could do the same thing with a traditional looking solution, but you're going to pay a little bit more because, to get the same amount of I/O in separate pieces, you're going to pay a little bit more. So if the fit is just right, then an all-in-one is another scenario where it's hard to beat. Okay, OEM machines. This is not that much different from the last slide, really, but OEM machines. A lot of OEMs have some flexibility with the controls they put on their equipment. Now, of course, it's not always true with the big guys. The very large corporations, they'll spec very carefully what their controls have to be on everything. And, you don't have the freedom as an OEM to sell equipment into a company like that is, locked down, for instance. But more and more companies are just looking for solutions from their machine providers, and they don't necessarily care exactly how that solution is provided as long as the solution does what it needs to do. So again, lots of OEMs have found that OCS all-in-one controllers are just a great fit. They can make everything smaller. They can make their enclosure smaller. So not only do their controls cost less, but everything else around it costs less as well. And they don't have to deal with all the software and support headaches that they get from the big guys. So OEMs love to use all-in-ones. Okay, now let's talk about some different scenarios where maybe a modular controller might be a better fit for a particular company, or maybe they think it's a better fit for some preference purposes. So let's talk about some of those applications. Let's talk about applications where you've got a really complex mix of I/O. Not a few digital in, a few digital out, and some analog, but a real complex mix of different I/O types, maybe DC and AC and relay and different types of sensors. If you've got a real complex mix of I/O and you've got quite a bit of each of those, then having your OCS I/O on the back plate to solve that I/O requirement is going to be the ideal solution, which means that in that scenario, maybe an ideal solution might be more built around a modular controller. Applications where the screen is going to be mounted separately from where all the controls are. And if there's a bunch of I/O requirements, it may mean that in that particular application, maybe a more modular approach with a traditional PLC looking product might be better. So a Horner modular controller might work better there. Okay, we're showing a pendant there on the screen. Now, even on that pendant, if you can look, even on that pendant, you see it's designed to have a few operators there. So in reality, an all-in-one controller wired to those operators connected back to a OCS I/O in another panel, that would be a good solution as well. So again, there's no wrong answer here. And then applications where the screen can be easily damaged. That's definitely one where there's a real advantage to having separates, because like Don had mentioned earlier, if your screen gets damaged, no big deal, swap out the screen. It's just a component. Unlike Rockwell and other third-party HMIs, there's no configuration to do. There's no program to load into it. With the HMI Connect touchscreens, literally, it's a component. You pull the old one out, you put the new one in, you plug it in, and you're done. So great solution in those applications where it's a rugged environment and the HMI could get damaged. Okay, applications where having multiple screens is a big advantage. Large machines or work areas where you don't need a lot of processing power, but having multiple locations where the operator can actually do his job and see what's going on is a big advantage. So again, that's a scenario where the HMI Connect in combination with our splitter and the CPU 300 would be a great fit. And then applications where you just don't need a screen at all. The new Micro CPU 250, wow, 34 I/O points in a really small package. You could do a lot in an application that's remote. It has all the communications you could ever need. It has probably most of the I/O you're going to need in most remote applications. And you don't need a screen because, there's nobody out there to look at it. So why do you need a screen? So that's another scenario where, that might be a really good fit for a modular controller like a Micro CPU 250. So again, the answer is whatever is best for your application is what you need to use. And at Horner, we feel really great about all the solutions that we have to offer at this point in our history, more than ever before. All right, Don, it's all yours again.
Thanks, Chuck. And like you said, there's no wrong answer. I know when I would teach PLC programming classes, if the program works, it's right. Same thing here. If you're happy with the solution and it works for you, it's the correct answer. So hopefully you see now Horner can handle all the solution applications that you can bring up to us, and just keep on bringing them to us. So we're here for you. So if there's any questions, I know there's a question in Chuck will probably answer, but is there any questions? Have we gone over enough to kind of give you a pathway on where to use the modular compared to the all-in-one? We're excited about both sides. We can provide those solutions for you. And we're really excited about the HMI Connect and the capabilities with the CPU 300, the CPU 260, which is coming out, and so forth. So if there's no more questions on that, I'll just continue. Here's some new products that are coming out in 2026, but later this year, hopefully. And we're excited about these too. The first one, the CPU 150/151, we're calling it the smartest relay product. When you get those opportunities for other manufacturers in the $100 range of smart relays, a lot of our customers don't think of Horner because they think of a display and screen and so forth. But we want to get into this market where you can start learning about the Horner architecture and the Horner environment. So this is being developed now, and we're looking for those custard machines, the small machines where you're selling hundreds and thousands of them and so forth. But it's also going to be very, very powerful for what it's going to do. So I did see a question. Let me go back from Alex about the splitter. Yes, it will give you an additional 8 meters, 26 feet away. We also will be coming out with a repeater too, just a repeater. So you can go just one connection, but you can go longer than 26 feet. So the splitter will come out soon. We displayed it. If you saw one of Chuck's YouTube videos from the SPS show, we showed the splitter in action with 3 displays. So it is coming out soon, and we're doing other things with the splitters and repeaters that can give us more flexibility. And I hope I answered that question for you, Alex. So again, the CPU 150 is in development, but it's going to get us into those large volume, smaller cost opportunities. Also, just real quickly, we have a device called the Cellular I/O Gateway for OCS360. So it's a standalone device with universal analog, some digital inputs, and a digital output that will transfer the data directly to OCS360 for data collection and dashboards. We're testing this device out in a water application in Florida, and we're looking at it to be somewhere between $900 and $1,000. But that will also include the OCS360 subscription and also the cellular data charges and so forth. So we're still working on this. We've shown it to a few customers, and I've actually have one on my desk, but we're working on that one too.
So let me go ahead and answer a quick question here while you pause, Don. So basically, a question from Jim. I think he was talking about the CPU 150, 151. He was asking if these will be AC powered and if they include AC inputs. So they don't. These have DC inputs. Actually, the only thing we're really still looking to include AC inputs on is OCS I/O. So Jim, we don't have anything AC powered other than those AC inputs currently, And then Chris had one more question I'll go ahead and answer. So he asked about what is the connection on the micro IO? I think he's asking about maybe the micro relay module. He's asking if it's Ethernet IP or Modbus. So basically, it's neither of those. It's just our C-SCAN connection. So you just plug a RJ45 cable between the Horner controller and the micro series and the IO module, and that's what you have there. So I think I got the question right. If not, ask the same question again, just in a different way.
You know, Chris, one of the cool things about the CPU 250 is that it could be an Ethernet IP client. So you will have that 34 IO points built in to the CPU 250 that could be an Ethernet IP drop. Oh, Mr. Phil Horner answered a question there. The CPU 150 will be able to handle OCS IO, and then you could use the OCS IO 120 volt module.
Got it. Okay, so you could connect an OCS IO module to it. There we go. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thanks, Phil. That was a good contribution there.
Yep. We always end with this, or say Cscape is the glue that holds everything together, right? It's the programming logic, it's the screen development and so forth. And this is what everyone uses to program whatever device. And it's just the glue. It's been the glue since day one. It is free. You can download it off the website. We have both the new versions and whatever old version you want. And it's just very important that yet you understand that even if you need software, it's free for you to use and so forth. So, okay, real quickly here. I'm not going to get into a whole OCS360 presentation, but when we first introduced OCS360, I mentioned that there was 3 parts of OCS360. There was the data collection or data storage, data visualization and control, meaning you would have dashboards to show you what the process is. You could have widgets for push buttons to start and stop process. And then we also talked about OCS360 connectivity, right? What that meant was being able to use Cscape over the OCS360 backbone to talk to controllers remotely. Well, that is available now, right? I've got data collection. We've got the visualization using widgets, but we also now have remote connectivity. And it can be combined with the visualization subscription, or it could be a separate package. Now, that package would be $100 a year based on 1 gigabyte of data a month. So, for example, when you create a PGM file to put on a micro SD card, think of that as downloading size to download a whole program to a controller. It's pretty equivalent. So some programs are 50 meg, some are 300 meg. Once you get up close to the 1 gig, Cscape will tell you you're getting close to and offer you the ability to buy an additional gig for $20. Now, this isn't per device. This is just the data transfer of 1 gig a month. So if you have 20 devices out there and you just want to make a little change or do a data watch or something like that, you could add as many devices as you'd like for that $100. Now, we've done some beta testing, and what we're trying to help you do is, in most traditional ways of remotely connecting to a controller, there is some third-party remote security device from numerous companies, right? And those range from $500 to $1,500. And a lot of them now have come up with subscription plans per year and so forth. So what we're trying to do, and again, this is just from Cscape to a controller, is to remove these third-party devices. And we're going to use the OCS backbone, which is secure tunneling. And we've done videos on that. secure tunneling to be able to use Cscape to a controller. Now, we are shortly releasing 10.2 Service Pack 1, and we're releasing device firmware 17.4 for Prime and Canvas. We are working on connecting up micros. Right now, it doesn't work. The enhanced micro will work that we introduced before, but this will allow you to connect up Cscape. Now, what you'll be able to do is remote programming, remote debugging. We are working on FTP capability, so you'd be able to suck the data off a micro SD card. And this is much further out, firmware upgrades. Maybe we download the firmware files onto the SD card, and then you go through the normal process. But that will be available, let's just say, end of the month. Okay? So therefore, it's $100. If you see Cscape right now and you're using 10.2, you're going to see your connection wizard look a little different. You're going to see this right here in the connection wizard. And a little question mark will tell you, you need a subscription and so forth. But at the end of the month, it will walk you through setting up a subscription for just remote connectivity to a controller. Now, the one thing that you still need from the controller is not the IP address. It's the MAC address of the controller. And you can find that in the system menus. But once you add that MAC ID address in there, it will start creating the secure tunnels and sending the certificates back and forth for security. You cannot copy these or clone or trick these certificates. That is, we are at the highest level of TLS 1.3 security for those secure tunnels. So if you want, you still get 90 free days of usage to try it out, just like you do in 360. And you could sign up and your credit card won't be charged until day 91. So when the firmware comes out, give it a try, and within those 90 days and see if it will be. We think it's a great addition to the OCS 360 suite of software to help you be more productive in your business, right? No trips out there and so forth. So, and hopefully save you some money so you don't need those third-party connection devices. Okay, so just OCS 360 requirements. You need the latest Cscape version, which will be 10.2 Service Pack 1 at the end of the month. You need 17.4 firmware and any Ethernet connection. We have used it both wired, Wi-Fi, even cellular, an OCS 360 subscription. If you have any issues with that, just contact me directly. I can walk you through it, whether it's the visualization side of things or the remote connectivity. As long as the controller has real Ethernet or web internet access, we can get you connected up pretty easy. So going back to OCS 360, we have our 3 plans. This is for data visualization and data collection. But if you want to add remote connectivity to this, it will be $50 annual charge. And again, you still have the 90 days free usage to see if it will work in your application. So to collect 250 pieces of information and connect Cscape, it'll be $300 a year. Contact me and we'll walk you through it, and we'll start collecting data very quickly. So that was it for the product. Some announcements, and you've seen this in Chuck's video and so forth. But Horner is really diving into our academic program this year. We're offering educational institutions either a combination, but a Canvas CPU with a 7-inch display with all the I/O simulators and cables and so forth, either a micro, and we will give those to educational institutions for free. We had a live stream about this a couple weeks ago, right, Chuck? So
we've had we did in the last month or two.
Yeah. So we've already gotten great interest from 3 or 4 universities and tech schools.
More like 10 or 12.
10 or 12? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. And then lastly, I can't stress enough, and Chuck's going to laugh at me. If you have a technical question or whatever, the first place I go to is our YouTube channel. If Chuck hasn't addressed an application issue, it has to be a really weird issue. And he's always looking for more. He's always looking for the newest or the one-of-a-kind application. But highly recommend going to our YouTube channel and just search for X. I know we've done 6 or 7 how to set up OCS360 and dashboards and alarms and so forth. Those are great resources. They're relatively short, 20 to 30 minutes. And I'll tell you a quick story. We were at a product show last year, and 2 visitors from Taiwan came to our booth. Chuck just happened to be on break. They came to the Horner booth just because they wanted to meet Chuck Ridgway because of his videos, which is outstanding. We have had close to 100,000 views to our videos. So they're there for your reference, and they're great. And then lastly, just our trade show schedule. In February, we're doing a Indianapolis water show, more regional, but in June, we will be in Chicago at Automate. Stop by and see us. In September, again in Chicago, we'll be at IMTS, and both of those are at McCormick. And then later in September, we'll do the WEFTech show, which is a national, more global wastewater show in New Orleans. So with that, the last thing is our OCS training schedule. Our basic class will be in February. It's filling up quickly. So if you really are interested in going to the basic class, please sign up now. And then our advanced class is in March. And then we also have Q2 and Q4. In the advanced classes, we also do a 360 lab where we're actually sending data up to 360 and you can manipulate the dashboards and so forth. So that's the last slide. Have we answered every question there, Chuck?
Not yet. We have some more. So let me go ahead and get those answered. So Chris had a good question. He said, do your newest controllers, your newest PLCs, allow web pages and web servers through HTTP to be viewed? If so, can you overlay buttons and other OCS components? So absolutely, all of our controllers, whether they have a built-in screen or not, they all support WebMI, which is the feature that we have that is for viewing screens remotely and also doing control remotely if the control engineer has enabled that in the feature. And if you had multiple web pages out there looking at different pages or the same page at the same time, they basically are all going to have the capability of accessing the data at once. If control capability was enabled, then they'd all have the capability of doing control potentially if their user credentials allow it. So I think what you're asking about, yes, we do have that capability. So a CPU 250, for instance, it supports WebMI. Just because it doesn't have a screen, it still supports WebMI. And then Phil had another good contribution. He said, don't forget that for OCS360 or any other remote Horner product, Starlink is also another way you can connect our product to the internet. So I'm sure we'll be doing a video on connecting OCSs to Starlink relatively soon. That'll be a fun one.
That would be a real fun.
We had a question, just a clarification from Bob, who asked, when is the Ethernet IP scanner scheduled for release? Basically, we're hoping to have it out by the end of the first quarter. So that's the goal there. And I think that is it.
Phil mentioned, too, that we're doing a few international shows, the SPS show in Italy in May, and then the SPS show in Nuremberg in November. If you have a chance, the SPS show in Nuremberg is by far the best automation show in the world. It's much different than Hanover, and it is just strictly automation. All the players are there. Last November, we showcased the Ethernet IP scanner, the HMI Connect Splitter. What other things, Chuck?
Well, yeah, the big things were Ethernet IP scanner and the splitter. Of course, a lot of products were new to Europe in addition to being new here last year, including all the modular CPUs and the CPU 250 and all those as well. So, and there was a big OCS360 demonstration that was very cool that showed integrating different applications and pushing the data up to the OCS360 cloud.
Right. So that's it, guys. We appreciate you with the questions, but we appreciate you taking time out of your day to understand that. If you have any questions or any other applications that you want to pass by us, just go ahead and shoot them to us, and someone will respond to you and walk you through it. So we appreciate you. Thank you very much, and have a great day.